Call to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the October 12th, 2017 Hillsborough Township Planning Board meeting. This meeting has been duly advertised according to Section 5 of the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law Sunshine, 1975 Sunshine Law. Roll call, please.
Ms. Forrest?
Here.
Mr. Wagner?
Here.
Mr. Heshtag?
Here.
Mr. Scobo?
Here.
Mr. Weinstein?
Here.
Vice Chairman Julian?
Here.
Committeeman, not yet. Mayor Sarachi?
Here.
And Chairman Lapani.
Here. There are no deposition of minutes to go through or resolutions, planning board business committee reports. So the only thing we'll go down to, is there any business from the floor that is not on today's agenda? Anybody would like to come and say? Okay, seeing none. There's no consideration of ordinances, so we are going to go to the first topic on the agenda today, which is the request to adjourn for 814 CRE LLC dash, pause. We're having technical difficulty. And we're back. Okay. So we were at the first application here, 814 CRE LLC, 814 Development Veterinary Hospital, File 17 PV 04 MSPV. TOD 1114-17, Block 142, Lot 33, 212, Route 206. Applicant is seeking preliminary and final major site plan approval, C-bulk variance for side yard setback. Submission waivers from providing a CIS and parking design waiver to construct a new veterinary hospital with parking and stormwater improvements on property in the I-1 Light Industrial Zone District. Highway approaches must adhere to I-2 zoning ordinance standards, EC review of 7/24/17. It's a request to adjourn to November 9th, 2017 without further notice. There's a letter in your packet from the attorney and the applicant requesting that. Anything else?
Just a short review for the board's benefit. You may recall from the last hearing, it was decided that the applicant needs to also file an application for the temporary trailer and the parking lot or temporary parking lot that would need to be provided during construction of a new building. We've had some conversations. They will be coming in with a separate application and parallel application for the existing facility and showing where they're going to relocate the parking in the meantime. What we've done is we've scheduled that for November 9th, which will be directly followed by the original application, so you'll see both applications on the same night. You'll get the whole picture that way.
Okay, thank you.
The determination, just for the further edification of the board, was that while the original material in question had been approved by the zoning board, that has expired. So now they belong, because the permitted uses have now changed in the zone, they now belong before this board. So I believe what we're asking for is an extension for no notice on the application that came before you, but they're going to have to notice the second application regarding the temporary trailer and the temporary parking. This does not cover them out of notice for that.
That's right.
Now, this letter does not say anything about noticing for that part.
Well,
We have
They will have to.
they'll have to notice that.
they'll be notified.
Okay. So we'll have a motion to,
This is a motion to continue,
To
Mr. Chairman, the
continuous.
hearing that was originally conducted on the 22nd of September.
right, 22nd of September and October 3rd, 2017,
Well,
which
that
would
was
have been
the email,
today.
But the asking
Yeah.
for the continuation of that hearing to November the 9th without further notice, but that does not cover the second application that Mr. Masky mentioned regarding the trailer and the parking.
Okay. We have a motion to approve that?
So.
Okay.
Second.
Second, thank you. Roll call?
Yes. Ms. Forrest?
Yes.
Mr. Wagner?
Yes.
Mr. Heshtag?
Yes.
Mr. Scobo?
Yes.
Mr. Weinstein?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Julian?
Yes.
Committeeman Delcourt?
Yes.
Mayor Sarachi?
Yes.
Chairman Lapani?
Yes. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, let the record also reflect that Committeeman Delcor arrived at 7:35.
Thank you. Welcome. Okay, we're up to our next application. This is Scott Lutsky, file 17 PB 10 MSV. Time of decision TOD of January 17th of 18, block 152, lot 4 and 4.01, 472 and 466 Farm Road. Applicant is seeking consolidation of existing lots, then a PF major subdivision approval and C-bulk variance for relief from minimum side yard setback for the existing house on proposed lot 4.02 to remain, hardship waiver for tree mitigation, and submission waiver from submitting a community impact statement to subdivide 5.91 acres into 5 single-family dwelling lots with improvements on property in the R residential zoning district, the EC review of 9/25 of 17. Counselor, we'll give you a little extra time since you're working on 1.5 hands there.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Peter Lanford. I'm here appearing on behalf of the applicant. I did bring my jacket. But I apologize. It's sort of difficult
No.
working with it.
Please, no worries.
As you indicated, Mr. Chairman, this is an application for
Can
preliminary
you
and
put the
final
microphone closer to your mouth, please?
major
Thank you.
subdivision for property at 472 and 466 Farm Road. The application is to create 4 new single-family residential dwellings with a road to service those dwellings. There is only one variance that is part of this application, and that variance is for the existing dwelling on one of those properties, which is in violation of the side yard. That variance is not being exacerbated or changed as a result of this application. I do have Mr. Ford here tonight to present the testimony in conjunction with this application, and I would request that he be sworn.
Okay.
Please swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Come on. Let's get professional.
Thank you.
Mr. Ford, what is your occupation?
I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey, still employed with Van Cleef Engineering Associates. And I've appeared before this board on many occasions.
We'll accept Mr. Ford's qualifications.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Ford, have you brought certain exhibits which we need to mark into evidence and upon which you will rely in your testimony this evening?
Yes, I have 3 exhibits.
All right. Can you indicate what they are, and we can have them marked?
Okay. The first exhibit, A1, will be a colored rendering exhibit of sheet 2 of the submitted plans, which is the existing conditions plan. A2 will be a colored rendering of the proposed condition, which is the subdivision at hand. And A3 will be a concept plan illustrating an earlier rendition of the subdivision layout, which we'll speak to in a moment.
Okay.
1 second, please. Okay, A1, A2, and A3. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Okay.
Okay. Mr. Ford, can you, and refer to A1, describe the subject property in its present condition,
Okay.
and also the surrounding land uses?
Yes. I've placed the exhibits in the order we entered them, A1, A2, and A3, left to right. A1 is a colored rendering of sheet 2 in the existing conditions plan. The property is highlighted in color while the surrounding conditions are exhibited with an aerial photo. The property fronts on Farm Road, directly across from Stoll Drive. It's in the R zone, approximately 6 acres in size. There are 2 existing single-family homes on the property. One on lot 4.01, owned by Miss Morrison, who's in the audience. And then one, which is the larger lot, owned by Mr. Lutsky, which has an existing dwelling approximately in the center of the property with a driveway out to Farm Road.
Okay, in addition to the dwelling, are there any other structures on the property?
Yeah, there are existing outbuildings on the property owned by Mr. Lutsky, and currently both of the properties are serviced by on-site wastewater disposal systems or septic systems. There is public water in Farm Road, and I understand Ms. Morris's property is serviced by public water, but Mr. Lutsky's still serviced by an on-site well.
Okay, and in looking at the Exhibit A1, the surrounding land uses are predominantly residential in nature, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Moving to A2, can you indicate to the board what we are proposing to do?
Okay. What's being proposed is a standard subdivision. Has basically 4 new homes serviced by a cul-de-sac. The cul-de-sac is lined up directly across from Stoll Drive's intersection with Farm Road, which is a desirable condition. And then Ms. Morrison's house is remaining and would be on one of the corner lots on the new cul-de-sac. And then, as I stated, 4 new homes around the cul-de-sac.
Okay. Can you indicate, and you can reference A3, why Ms. Morrison's lot and her property was included in the subdivision and what you were trying to accomplish when actually Mr. Lutsky discussed this project with Ms. Morrison?
Right. Okay. At the onset of the application, we developed a concept plan, which I'm pointing to now, which is A3. What I've highlighted on that concept plan is basically an identical subdivision layout, but with a fairly significant subtle difference, and that is Ms. Morrison's property is highlighted in pink, and then Mr. Lutsky's property with the 4 new lots is highlighted in green. And what you'll notice is by lining up the new cul-de-sac road directly opposite Stoll Drive and having it run perpendicular to Farm Road, you end up with a sliver of land because of the unique characteristics of the 2 lots. They're not perfect rectangles. You end up with this sliver of land between the cul-de-sac and Miss Morrison's property and this lot, and all the other lots are conforming, but you have this I'll say, sliver of land that would potentially lead to issues between the landowners. So Mr. Lutsky approached Ms. Morrison and brought her in as part of the application so we could essentially trade equal land. That is, this sliver of land and property would become part of Ms. Morrison's property, and then a rear portion of Ms. Morrison's property would become part of that lot at the end of the cul-de-sac, thus giving us a more standardized layout.
Okay. The land exchange is basically almost square footage for square footage between
Correct.
the 2 pieces?
Identical, yes.
Okay. And as I indicated in my opening statement, and I identified a variance, and that variance is on Ms. Morrison's lot, is that correct?
That's correct.
Can you indicate to the board what that variance is?
The existing house is set back from the side yard in non-conformant condition, so that is the only variance we're asking for as part of the application.
Okay, and this application doesn't in any way exacerbate that variance?
No. The only way to remedy that variance would be to remove the house.
Okay. Now, You indicated that Ms. Morrison's dwelling is now serviced by a septic system, is that correct?
Correct.
Now, how is this whole subdivision going to be handled as far as water and sewer?
As I stated earlier, the Farm Road has public sewer in it, or excuse me, public water, so the water would be brought in with a main to service all the new dwellings. The existing dwelling Mr. Lutsky has on his property would be removed, and Ms. Morris is already connected to public water. With regards to wastewater, there is an existing sanitary sewer in the development to the rear or east of the site, and there actually is already an existing HTMUA, or the Hillsborough Townships MUA has an easement to provide for an extension of sewer to service this property. The sewer would be extended into the site, and all 4 homes, including Ms. Morrison's, would be connected to public sewer. So as the board knows, while we're in 1-acre zone, anything that's not serviced by public water or sewer requires a 2-acre lot. So even in today's standards, Ms. Morrison's 1-acre lot would be undersized. By virtue of bringing in the public sewer, we remedy that existing nonconformity.
Okay. And we would also, if Ms. Morrison request, provide her access to her property through the new road?
Yes, we've shown on the submitted subdivision plans a concept for a driveway connection to the cul-de-sac from Ms. Morrison's existing driveway.
Okay. Can you indicate to the board how stormwater management will be handled with respect to this application?
Okay. Yes, there's, the road's been designed in accordance with the township and residential site improvement standards. There'll be a series of catch basins to collect the water draining to the cul-de-sac, and there is a proposed underground stormwater management system beneath the proposed road. That would be a series of pipes in a bed of stone. And with regards to discharge, right now, there's a small portion of the property, basically from the existing house forward, drains toward Farm Road, but the rest of the property drains to the rear and to the north. So the plans as submitted to the township included discharge from the underground stormwater basin to the low point on the site, which is adjacent to our northerly property line. We'll hear in a moment, we'll go through the staff review comments, but Mr. White, in one of his stormwater management review comments, expressed a concern about that point discharge. We do, as you know, with every application, submit to the county, the Delaware and Raritan Canal Commission, and the Soil Conservation District, and we've had secured the Soil Erosion and Sediment Control District's approval, so we wouldn't be causing any adverse or erosive conditions at that location based on their determination of approval, but in the interest of being conservative and addressing Mr. White's concern, since we reviewed his memo, we have looked at the stormwater management system, and we can, I think, fairly easily just reconfigure that discharge toward the neighbor's property to the north and eliminate that stormwater discharge and connect to the existing stormwater system in Farm Road, and that's what we would do as a subject of any approval this board may grant.
So at that point in time, then, all runoff from this site will be taken out toward Farm Road?
There'll still be a portion of the rear yards here, but where the discharge from the basin is would be out to Farm Road.
Okay.
Just for clarification on that, I don't think it was Somerset County that approved or disapproved it. It was they referred to the township to review the plan.
Oh, no, yes, Somerset County referred. I'm talking about the Somerset Union Soil Conservation District. They review head walls and discharges to waterways and whether there's erosion or not erosion, and also your management during construction. That's the approval I was referring to.
You were talking about the stormwater management plan.
Right. And soil erosion and sediment control is concerned with stormwater management.
But the county referred the stormwater management plan to the township because it's a private property.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
Just for the clarification.
Correct. No, I understood. Right.
Okay, Mr. Ford, also as part of the excuse me, the stormwater management plan, there is a proposed reforestation. Can you indicate to the board what that's all about?
Yes. As part of the stormwater management system, if you will, you know, obviously, anytime you turn lawn or pervious area into impervious, cover it with a house or pavement, you would cause additional runoff. So that's with a land use change that would cause additional runoff. What we've implemented on this project, in addition to the underground stormwater management system, is taking some green areas that are meadow or grass, which produce more runoff than woods, and have designated them as being converted to woods. And this is something we've also done in conjunction with our tree mitigation plan, so we plant trees, and also to provide a pretty substantial buffer adjacent to our most immediate residential neighbors. Although it's, you know, buffering residence to residence, we've preserved the trees along the property line, and then we've proposed these reforestation areas at the rear of these proposed lots to provide the buffer, enhance the greenery, provide for the tree mitigation, and also enhance the stormwater runoff.
Okay.
That is reduce runoff.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. Now, just again, for the record, all of the new lots that we are proposing are at least 1 acre in size in compliance with the ordinance, correct?
Correct.
And all of the houses that will be constructed on those lots will meet all of the bulk requirements of the ordinance, correct? Okay. Now, have you had an opportunity to review certain reports that were generated by members of the township staff or consulting engineer?
Yes.
Okay. With respect to the report that was dated September 27, 2017, from Mr. Weniger, the Chief Fire Marshal, do you have any problem complying with that report?
No, that's a typical request. There's an existing dwelling that we would be removing on Mr. Lutsky's property, and what Mr. Winiger's asked is that when that's slated for demolition, that he has the opportunity to use it for training, which we've done on numerous applications successfully, most recently at the house on Route 206 by Old Somerville Road, and where the affordable housing apartments are being constructed on Amwell Road. Both of those locations, we were able to coordinate with Mr. Werniger's office to facilitate the use of those structures as they were demolished for training purposes.
Okay. I direct your attention to the report of Mr. White dated October 10th, 2017. You've obviously reviewed that report, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and preliminarily, we can indicate that we can comply with everything requested therein, and we've reviewed the report with our client who's willing to comply with everything contained therein. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Just a couple of points to touch on. The reforestation area we have defined. There was a request in the reports, or there was an indication that there are sidewalks that are required. One of the reports indicated that it needs to be put along the frontage of Farm Road and at least on half of the interior roadway. Is that correct?
Correct.
And in discussing the matter with the owner of the property, he is willing to put that sidewalk in. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Stormwater 1
Yeah.
and 2?
Yeah, and can you briefly touch on the numbers 1 and 2 on the issue of stormwater management?
We're on page 4 of 7. Page 3 of 7 had a series of comments regarding the final plat. We agreed to all those as a condition of approval. And with regards to the traffic requests, we'd address them as well. On page 4 starts a heading, Stormwater Management, items 1 and 2. First, item 2 is the comment I referred to earlier in my presentation regarding the stormwater management system's discharge toward Lot 3, our immediate neighbor to the north. And we've described that we would reroute that so that it connects to the existing drainage system in Farm Road. And then with regards to item 1, Mr. White has pointed out that we have proposed the underground stormwater management basin within the road. And after discussions with Mr. White and Mr. Masky, it's our understanding that it may be the desire of the township to not have this a public road, but have it a private road, whereby the underground stormwater management system would be within that private road, and the private road would be owned and maintained by a homeowners association that's created for the 4 new lots. The other alternative, and we've done this on other applications, would be to relocate the underground stormwater management system out of the road, put it on one of the lots, and this is, I think most recently on a project on Shelburne Court Extension and backs up onto Hillsborough Road, which is under construction, where we located this underground basin on one of the lots within a drainage easement, and that drainage system could be maintained by a homeowners association, and then the road could be dedicated as a public road. So that would be the
option, but
The option.
But in this case, we're proposing to leave the stormwater management system
Right
as
where it's at.
proposed, and that the new roadway that's going to be constructed will be a private roadway.
correct.
So at that point, then the homeowners association would be responsible for the maintenance of it?
Correct.
Correct.
So is that,
Both the road and the detention basin, correct.
how does that kind of work? Is that a good way
Well,
to do it?
put it this
or-
way, you got 4 people on the hook instead of just 1 person. Town can lien all 4 properties. You get a lot more done that way. And it's been done in the past. DEP's BMP manual doesn't want you to saddle 1 homeowner with the responsibility of maintaining it. Basically, it's not a good idea.
Yeah. I guess they just have to like explain that to the homeowners when they,
I'm sure the O&M manual for the detention basin will be filed with, and probably attached to all those lots. So whenever, if you're the 2nd, 3rd, 4th purchaser of the property, you'll be on notice basically, and there'll be association, you'll have dues. There's gonna be fees for you to pay for this maintenance of this.
right, okay.
In addition, we'll be required to file a public offering statement, filed with DCA in Trenton, so from the first owner on down, they will know beforehand what their rights, responsibilities, and obligations will be.
Okay.
Let's see. The next report I'd like you to focus on is the report of Mr. Masky dated September 28th, 2017. The first, or the second page basically just reviews the bulk requirements and indicates that other than the variance for Ms. Morrison's house, everything is in compliance. Is that correct?
There is one item to discuss. Mr. Masky's asked us to address regarding tree mitigation and preservation. We do have a tree mitigation plan that's proposed as part of the application. We've identified the trees to be removed. As I've indicated, we've proposed a substantial landscaping around the perimeter of the property. That's in compliance with the tree mitigation requirement, albeit with that application of the economic hardship waiver, which limits the landscaping cost to 1.5% of the total project cost, which includes actually the cost of the construction of the dwellings as in addition to the road. There also is a technical deviation or waiver, Mr. Masky points out, where we are removing trees for the construction of the new cul-de-sac road, the dwellings, and the driveways to the dwellings. We've identified 51 trees within the area to be removed, with the exception of counting those trees within that 40-foot area around the dwelling. But when you count the trees within that 40-foot area around the dwelling, there's approximately another 30 trees, bringing us up to about 85 trees to be removed, which is slightly over that 20% threshold of the total trees on site, which is a limit of 55. So we'd be asking for that relief as well.
And the proposed plan, however, is not to remove any trees other than those that are absolutely necessary for the construction of the dwellings or the roads. Is that correct?
Correct.
And in addition, as part of this application, there will be a significant reforestation, as you previously testified to.
Right.
Let me just pick up on the forestation. We need that to be recalculated because the initial formula wasn't worked out properly. You have to start and to consider all the trees that are being removed, not just the critical area. You do, as you said, you need a waiver to remove any trees outside the critical footprint area, which is basically the building envelope, and you need a variance to remove 20% of the trees on the site. So you need to submit a new formula so we know exactly how many trees we're talking about.
Yes, we're 51 on the plan. When you include that area beyond the critical area, we're at 85.
But you can't separate the two.
No, I'm totaling them together.
Okay.
It's about another 30 that we didn't count. And with implementing the rerouting of the stormwater that discharged to the north end, we actually probably will remove about 10 fewer trees. So the total would be 75, which is about 27%. So we're just over the 20% threshold.
Okay, well, I just need you to
We'll
submit that
provide
in
that
writing.
all, right.
Okay, put it on the plan.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Masky spoke to the sidewalks too in
Right.
his general comments. Also, the commitment that both all the new dwellings and the existing dwelling would be serviced by public water and sewer. And that would be an agreement to, and then with regards to the description of the driveway, the alternative driveway to Miss Morrison's lot, that's really as a courtesy to offer Miss Morrison not only that frontage along the cul-de-sac, but an actual access route that she could implement so she could become part of the community in that way as well.
We would just need you to give us the corresponding impervious coverage, it's one driveway, the other, or both, whatever it
Correct.
might be.
Okay.
And, yeah, we have not worked that out with Ms. Morrison, but we will, and we'll give you the numbers. Finally, did you look at the site triangles, both for the new roadway and also the driveways? And can you put them on the plan? And
Yes.
are there any issues with respect to the site triangles?
No issues.
Okay, finally, you did appear with the applicant in, earlier this month with...
Sorry, there was one thing that I did leave off my memo. I'm sorry, it's my fault. Mr. Bernstein brought it to my attention. There is an affordable housing obligation, as there is on all residential developments, and we'll work out the formula, and we'll have the numbers ready prior to compliance.
And we understand that's an obligation and requirement.
Okay.
You did appear before the Environmental Commission, is that
Yes.
correct? And are there any environmental issues with respect to this site? Are there any wetlands that we have to deal with?
We're not disturbing any critical areas. We did meet with the Environmental Commission, made the same presentation with regards to the improvements to the environment with the elimination of the 2 on-site septic systems, the connection to public sewer, the reduction or limitation to the greatest extent possible of the existing tree removal, as well as the reforestation area. And there was one, I think, in the memo we received from the Environmental Commission subsequent to the meeting, there was an identification of a typo on the plan. We'll correct that to their satisfaction.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ford. I have no further questions.
Okay, Mr. White, is there anything else you need to address?
Mr. Ford, I spoke briefly the other day. He's going to be able to address it, so once
Okay.
he gets it revised and sends it back to me, we'll look it over.
Okay. David, anything else?
Not at the moment.
I just have just one question, just maybe a clarification, maybe for the public too, to maybe explain what the underground sewer system,
Stormwater?
stormwater, what it entails, what's being installed. Is there any kind of maintenance that needs to be done on a regular basis? Just, obviously, this is not a traditional stormwater mains, and obviously there's neighbors around, so maybe
Yeah.
always seems to be the biggest concern. Maybe please describe what the project entails underground, what it is.
Yes, okay. It's becoming more the norm, the underground. It's a series of pipes laid in a bed of stone, the collection system for the road, as well as runoff from the houses is directed to this underground basin. It provides for an area to store the stormwater temporarily and has an outlet structure that releases the stormwater from that underground basin at a controlled rate, such that at the end of the day, the 2, 10, and 100-year storms are actually reduced. The peak flows are reduced than from the existing condition. And this is detailed calculations that are presented to Mr. White's office for review and approval. And yeah, the county passes on it, but we also have our application pending with the Delaware American Canal Commission. And I can tell you they do review it in detail as well.
Okay, also, just for the record, is the water treated before it is discharged from the underground system?
Yes, I've spoken to quantity and peak runoff, but now, as I'm sure the board is familiar, there's new standards now that not only address quantity, but quality as well. So there's manufactured treatment devices that take out impurities in the water runoff from surfaces like roads or driveways. And with regards to maintenance, there is a maintenance manual now in addition to the stormwater management design report that we prepare, a maintenance manual that details out the maintenance requirements, the sequence and timing of those reviews and inspections and maintenance of the various aspects of the stormwater management system. And that report does get filed with the county clerk's office, and there's also a filing of identification that there's a stormwater management system through the DNR Canal Commission.
And is there a record like when that maintenance is done and then provided to the county so that it's being done?
There's a requirement for annual reporting to the township as part of our stormwater permit with DEP.
Correct.
So they can keep tabs on them that they're doing what they're supposed to
Correct.
be doing?
Absolutely.
Just for the public, okay.
Yeah, that actually is, even for existing facilities, your engineering department sent out public notices, because I know we've gotten contacted by several local entities that have on-site stormwater management systems that they're responsible for. And there's an annual inspection report that needs to be prepared by a professional. That is a licensed professional engineer or a certified stormwater inspector. I don't know if I have that's exactly the terminology for their certification, but that has to be submitted annually to the Township Engineering Department starting October of 2018, the new ordinance.
Have you guys put these in any other places in Hillsborough, any other places that you have some experience?
The underground basin?
Yeah.
Yes, the project that I referred to earlier, I think was initially identified as the Chua application. It was 4 or 6 lots on the extension of Shelburne Court, and then 1 lot fronting on Hillsborough Road. That has an underground basin. In that case, the road was actually dedicated as a public road, and the underground basin was put on one of the private lots, which I think the way this is being proposed is probably more desirable.
How did those work?
It's basically the same as an underground septic system, but with the stormwater management.
I mean, were they successful in terms of
Yes.
the engineering?
Yes.
And
Yes.
Any other questions? We have a motion to open to public.
There's actually, historically, there's an underground basin in the Stop and Shop parking lot. So that's how old some of this, there's above ground there, but there's an underground that's actually right near where the new drive-through Starbucks is being constructed. That has an underground basin under the parking lot. And it's been there for years, and you don't know it.
right.
Yeah.
No charge for the plug for Starbucks.
Actually, one question. The reforestation part sort of ends a little before you get to the north end of the property. Is that just because you're not really disrupting trees there, or is there a reason that?
Right here?
Yes.
That's actually where the sanitary sewer comes into the property. And we've shown some supplemental plantings on the other side of the easement, and we can put some more trees in that area as well, but that's why the sanitary would go through there.
Okay, but is there but if needed, it could be buffered a little bit more with some additional trees?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Anyone else? have a motion open to public?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we're going to ask now if anyone in the public has questions for Mr. Ford on the testimony that he gave. And the questions obviously need to be addressed, that's something he can answer, because there may be other witnesses coming up, I'm assuming, maybe to give testimony. Is there anyone else, or is that all you have?
I don't intend
All
to,
right.
the
So
the owner is here,
The
but
owner's here if we need to? All right, so if there's anyone has questions on the application and questions for Mr. Ford, we'll start here in the front. Come up to the microphone here in the front. Come up to the microphone. Yep, if you have a question, state your name and your address first.
Greg Thompson, One Stoll Drive. My property is demonstrated on the picture right there on the far left.
Okay, what's your question?
I'm going to warn you, I tend to be a very thinking person. I'm a scientist
Just
by nature.
closer to the mic, please.
I'm a scientist by nature. If I take too much time or overthink, I apologize. But it's kind of important because this only happens once. And any neighbors I may not know from the
Okay, please
adjacent
talk into the
neighbor-
mic. Just pick the
Any
microphone up.
neighbors I may not know from the neighborhood behind,
Mhm.
I would welcome their input if I make any incorrect statements. May I
Okay.
say that?
All right.
May I walk over?
We have to take the microphone with
Take
you.
this. Thank you very much. I
10-year rock
apologize.
star.
First of all, may I address Mrs. Morrison has been a very good neighbor for the last 17 years. And anything that's progressing in here, I do not wish to put down or go negatize. I'm just kind of a believer in the plan, do, check, act process. You folks are involved in the plan process. We're trying to do a do. I don't know how much the board has had the ability to truly look at a plan relevant to being asked to do a do. So given this, I'd like you to take the opportunity to make sure you think about the plan, because this is your opportunity. I heard a couple of things for the first time, a little bit that distressed me. Things I don't know, I'm not familiar with, I'm not aware of, relevant to public versus private roads. The first key thing I'd like to address to everyone here simply is, this road itself is about a quarter-mile stretch. It is a 35-mile-an-hour stretch. I have lived there for 16 years. If I may address my property, this is a problem now because this road is not well enforced. The intersection of Route 206 and Triangle Road not being developed as it should be, with the bypass not being completed as it had been planned, with what's happened over Duke's Parkway, over the opening of Duke Island Park, the volume going through. This road is becoming a road that you can't very well manage. And what is also happening from a public safety perspective is now people are being forced to go 35, 40 miles an hour on this road, trying to turn into this development. And this corner is becoming very much of a problem. And I'm concerned in this design, however we approach it, whatever we do it, I like the direct opposite approach. But I don't know how, from a speed limit perspective, we can do as part of this plan, no matter what a traffic study tells us, it says, oh, we're only adding 4 homes. This road is not well enforced. I don't know how we do that. It is the outlet primarily on the back end to the industrial development above there. And it is a major rush hour, cut through, cut back, and really needs to be addressed somehow by the planning board itself, especially if you're going to try and throw something more in that's going to try and be turning in and turning out from a public safety perspective. Okay? I can only just say that. So I would like to request of the board that you take into consideration, however that is done, speed limit reduction. I don't know if you look at making that one-way road as part of this. I don't know how you go and address that. But if there's the delay is going to be with the bypass, if the problem is going to be with the bypass, that's taking its time. If the public, right up here on the top is the county, trucks that come through in the winter, salt trucks coming through, trucks coming through. The bridge over here is the only bridge that is properly weight structured for the development back there to bring their trucks through. I don't know what's going to happen with the concrete, pavement that's taken over the concrete factory. So that's, which is back there over there. I don't know how that's going to affect trucks as they continue to build and coming forward. So putting in this roadway like this without having that properly controlled is a challenge. And then I heard a non-public road. I think knowing and living here, if this is going to happen and this is going to be controlled, that needs to be a proper road. If this is a road cul-de-sac here, I can't see any justification for this not being. So I can't understand how we could, because I don't know how this is proposed, not proposed, et cetera, et cetera. But any of the requirements that are put on this cul-de-sac should definitely be on this cul-de-sac. Okay? And how we address that, what we address that, I also heard, and don't like, but that's okay, you guys can plan it as you want to. I don't understand why there's no sidewalks there as well.
But can I answer a couple of your questions? I'm over here.
Yeah.
Okay. The road design is not any different than a public road.
Okay.
The private versus public is really just with regards to ownership and maintenance responsibilities.
Yeah.
With regards to sidewalks, one of the review comments was to provide sidewalk along the frontage of Farm Road and down one side of the new proposed cul-de-sac. And Mr. Lutsky, the applicant, is willing to do that. So the sidewalks will be installed unless the board directs us otherwise. And then you're right. The road directly opposite Stoll is probably it is the most desirable, safest way to design this with a complete cross intersection so you don't have conflicting turn movements.
Yeah, like I said, as far as coming here, if I had to live in a perfect world, I look at it and I say, well, it's not a horrible proposal. Then I'm going to preface it with my last comment is, these houses, there are a bunch of paper streets that come out through this neighborhood. When they were planned back in probably 1970, 71, when this development was built, if I'm correct, that was the time frame, 69, 71, 72. This parcel of land is still farm. This street probably comes out right around here and was planned to come into this neighborhood. Whatever was built here, this is now not being done. We're building this, if this goes through. We've had a proposal already on the books for this property up here, which I understand they'd have to reapply for because that has expired. We've sat here in this room the same way about 5 years ago, going through this discussion. I don't mind telling you I was almost involved in a lawsuit with this property because they were trying to tie into this retention basin on that side, which I felt directly affected my property right here. So I just want to tell you that that did happen. And that was part of a discussion that happened at that time. But I would also look, if you're truly a planning board, I don't know how you do this, what you do this, I mean a way advanced planning board. What does this proposal do to your thinking if someone wanted to develop this land? Because believe me, it's going to come. So if you look at how this is all laid out and how this development is planned, does this fit into looking at that proposal, how those streets were proposed, how everything was originally laid out? Does this layout fit with that? Or would you want to, again, I'm just saying, have another Snake Street that would come through and maybe potentially hook up to this in the future? If that is a plan. I don't know if that's a good idea, bad idea, or not. But I really want to leave in your hearts that this road, as it's set, right now proposed, is a very not good for the township structure. And if you could really in your soul, somewhere in your hearts, I don't know how you do this, how I get this on the agenda, what I do to do this, how I get this on your proposals, to change the speed on this road, to avoid problems, especially if you're going to add additional homes.
So just a couple things. As the board here, as it relates to the speed limits and how that road gets trafficked is not under the purview of this board. So your point is noted, and we can certainly take a look at that from a safety perspective, working with the police department, but that's not really something that this board As it relates to the new development, while I certainly understand your concern about the speed limit on Farm Road, I honestly got to tell you, a four-house development is not really going to have any material impact on the flow that's going to be there. I mean, you know, you're probably talking one car an hour or two.
I don't disagree.
So, but your point is noted, and we will certainly have that taken a look at to see if there's something that, from a safety perspective, we should be advancing on Farm Road.
Yeah, like I said, development is important in a town. Planned development is important in a town. And I know you can't control the way properties are flowed in and how it happens. But at the same time, like I said, I'm a plan, do, check, act guy.
Yep.
And I think it's unfortunately too much we get forced into the do plan. Whoops, let's check what happened. Hey, let's act. And by that time, it's out of our control. And I think as a government, we have to come up with a way to get that plan, do, check, act part of what we do. If that happened within this, we wouldn't have this concern about affordable housing and what people do and where people do what, et cetera. We're not doing enough of that. And unfortunately, I think this is kind of another example. And my last comment is I challenge you as you go through this to not just rubber stamp it, but look at it that way. Really look at it that way. And the public road, I can't see why. I know private road, I understand what you're saying. That road should be addressed like any road is addressed within the township. It shouldn't have any unique scenarios to take care of sewerage maintenance or drain maintenance or payment for this or that. Either it fits the mold or it doesn't.
There are a lot of private roads in town, though.
It doesn't
That's
mean
not,
that.
that's not unique. I don't want you to think this would be the only private
Okay.
road in town.
All right, I'm fair enough with that. Okay? Thank you for your time. Also.
Okay, anyone else? Okay.
I'm George Marias, 7 Hunt Club Road.
Is that on?
Question about the forest. Is that owned by the people, the two homes on that corner?
The reforestation area?
Yeah.
Yes, that would be on private land within an easement so that it would have to stay as a forest.
Okay, what mechanism will you have in place to keep people from whacking the trees down and expanding their lawns, like they do all over Hillsborough now?
Right, there would be an easement, so it would be precluded, the
Their property
conservation
ends at the
easement, right.
forest?
They own the property, but there'd be a conservation easement to protect the forest.
Okay.
It'd be filed with
How
the
much
property.
enforcement do we get about people still going in there ripping the trees out
The
like
board
they're doing
can't
all the
speak
green
to-
acres all over Hillsborough?
The board can't, it doesn't have the enforcement action, that's our code enforcement officer.
Okay?
And all you have to do is just notify him and he'll address it.
I've done that a number of times with no results. Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Kate Hutchison. I'm at 35 Ditmars. I have two concerns, specifically grading and drainage. I probably need to point. Can I take this?
Yeah, oh, sure.
Is this one? Is this working? Okay.
Just keep the mic close to your mouth.
Okay, I have a little anxiety problem, so.
Take your time, no rush.
Nothing to be
Nothing.
anxious about.
Okay. I am in this low corner. I hear you guys talking about the drainage that you've attended to up here, but you didn't deal with the drainage down here, where I am. I've been here for 25 years. This is a low spot. It's a 91 contour. Also, I want to call your attention, because I heard you talking about the trees. I took a look at your plans. You do not have, there's a tree that was a very large existing oak tree that was downed and sandy. There was actually two of them, one here and one here that went down. They went down because it's swampy back there. The trees had nothing to grip into and they went down and sandy. Okay, this tree that is down on this property is still alive. Okay, it took out part of my fence, which I had to reconstruct. In the event that, obviously, I would hope that you would remove that, because it's been an eyesore for me, but in removing it and cutting it back, that 12-foot or more thing is going to come back and it's going to retake out my fence. So I do have a concern about how you're treating that tree that isn't showing up on your plans at all. So that's one small concern. The second one still has to do with the drainage, in that right now, there's a 91 parcel and then the 92 runs along this way, so any runoff is fairly evenly distributed this way along these properties, okay? My lot is so swampy, I do not have a basement, okay? In summertime, in active growth, in a major storm, I have standing water in my backyard. The fact that you may be planting this reforestation here might be okay, you know, for the summertime, but it's not going to deal with the problems I have with water runoff in spring, fall, and winter. All right, as it is right now, from what I'm looking at the plans, you've moved what was a 92 contour here. The elevations of the building corners are 96. And the way you've graded it is running it along this corner right exactly, so it's going to come right, you know, and put more. And I don't want that. You know, ideally, I would like to see possibly if you can contain that and then, you know, have a catch basin or something here and then run it through to your storm stuff rather than direct it down into my corner. Those are my main concerns, the tree and then the grading, adding additional runoff to my property.
As you're speaking, Mr. White, who reviews on behalf of the board, is the engineer. Oh, here. Yeah, that's okay. So first with the trees, maybe. The dead or diseased trees can be reviewed at the time of planting of the new trees, so any dead or diseased trees can be removed. You know, that is a safety concern, like you said.
It's not dead and it's not diseased, it's just down. It's still very much alive.
What would you, well, whatever, I guess, an arborist or whoever is a professional with trees can address the condition of the tree at that time. And then the supplemental plantings, we've shown deciduous trees, but we can supplement some of them and change them to evergreen trees to provide a year-long buffer and perhaps help with the water situation that you have now. And then with regards to the grading and drainage, yeah, it was our intention to direct as much of the water from the rear of the property toward the front of the property. So when you see a higher elevation at the house, part of that is in order to enable us to get that house to drain out toward the new road.
Except that looking at your plan, it's funneling down that diagonal.
You need to speak into the microphone.
Yeah, here you go.
Except that when I was looking at your plan, the direction of flow is going into and then down along that.
Right, no doubt there'll still be a portion of the property that'll
Mic's
drain
not
towards
on.
your property.
Turn the mic back on? No, that one.
But we can work with Mr. White's office to direct as much drainage as we can to the new road to help not only reduce the runoff that goes to your property today to what the current standards are, but maybe perhaps reduce it even more to help alleviate your existing condition.
Okay, that would be appreciated,
Yeah.
because I do have, you know, because I've been there for 25 years, I do have photos, you know, of, you know, wintertime and whatever, where I have standing water along that property line, along that tree line. So I don't need any additional water.
I'll say all the existing condition now with the meadow should be improved by providing for the reforestation area. There's no impervious coverage
How
proposed.
soon is the reforestation being put in? Because obviously I'm not going to see any benefit from that until it's planted, and how long is the construction going to take?
A project like this, should the board grant approval, I'd be optimistic if I said they were in the ground and building by the spring. Usually it takes some time to address all the board's conditions and also the outside agency approvals, but it could perhaps be the spring time construction.
Okay, but then even still, it's going to take years before the trees are established enough to be sucking up the extra water.
Well, they're
So I'm not
they're
look-
not sticks planted,
Well,
they're substantial,
yes.
so they, but yes, you're right, the trees will take time to grow. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to take up a lot of time.
Just state your name first and address.
My name is Ted Husing, and I live at 39 Ditmar Circle.
Okay.
Spell your last name, start, please.
Husing, Huesing.
Thank you.
Okay. I just have the same concerns as Kate. I have 3 trees. One already fell down into my yard, took out my fence. I have a half-dead tree directly behind my house, and I have another one of their large trees that actually is about 20 feet into my property at this point in time. So I would like to know that if they're going to take care of those problems and also the drainage issues as well. So I have the same things.
Thank you. Next.
My name is Mark Cott, and I'm the owner of a property directly north.
Spell your last name, please,
KOT,
and your address.
2 Strawberry Lane.
Thank you.
And I'm the owner also of a property directly to the north of the subdivision.
Okay.
So I have...
You gotta stay close to the mic, okay? You can take it out and make it easier.
So I have a few concerns regarding this subdivision.
I'm gonna swap with them, Ted.
Make sure it's on.
Yeah, it's on.
As we see, there is a sewer connection that's coming from probably that corner of a property and going into the subdivision. I own this piece of property that's directly to the north. Now my question is, if there is a connection right here, about here, how this could be connected also to this property? I understand there is the easement coming about this way, but would this easement would allow me to connect to the sewer?
We haven't looked at that. I did, as part of the development of the plans for this project, reviewed the plans for your project that were on file, and it showed the public sewer, I believe, coming up Farm Road from the south. It wasn't, so there wasn't, but we can review that and work on that with the Hillsborough Municipal Utilities Authority. They would ultimately own and operate the public sewer. There would be an easement through there, so.
It shouldn't be a problem connecting.
Like I just said, we haven't engineered it. I didn't look at the development of your property or how to sewer it. But whatever we can do as we bring it into our property to allow for a future connection at the direction of the HTMUA, we can do that. I don't know if it'll be a problem or not. I haven't designed, anything for your property.
That's correct, but my question is, would this easement right here would allow me to connect to my property?
I think that's twofold. One is the fact that would you have the right to connect, and that would be up to the HTMUA, and this board can't tell you that. Number two, Mr. Forshire explained to you, is that elevation-wise, he does not know if you can connect. If this property is higher and the sewer's not deep enough, you would not be able to connect. So he doesn't know because he doesn't know what the inverts are.
Okay, actually, I spoke today with Scott Lynn from AUA, and there is a possibility. It is about 8 feet deep. We have a connection at that point. So I think it is possible.
Turn the mic off.
Speak it
No, it just went off.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
So it is possible. I'm just wondering that, my question is, is it possible to make additional connection? Let's say there is connection here, make another connection right here, and then the problem would be probably solved.
This is not an issue before this board.
It's not.
The application before this board relates to the sewer connection related to this property. Any further connections off of a potential line, if approved by the HTMUA, is going to be by the HTMUA in conjunction with whatever easements exist as to this property. So frankly, the board can't make any promises, the applicant can't make any promises, I'm not even sure the HTMUA can make any promises at this point, other than the fact that there may be another avenue for you to potentially connect your property to sewer, other than going up Farm Road.
That's correct, but if there is a easier way of doing it, I
So
believe-
that's going to have to play itself out in accordance to your application as it relates to whatever happened for this connection, and more importantly, what the HTMUA wants, because they're the ones who have to maintain and run that sewer line.
When I spoke with Scott Lynn, he mentioned it to me that it would be probably possible to...
Sir, we're not going to include Mr. Lynn's statements to you. They're what we call in the legal business classic hearsay, and frankly, they're not before this board. I think the best we can indicate is if the board makes an approval of this property with that sewer connection, that renders your property with another potential connection other than the one on the plans you currently have relatively going up Farm Road. That's about all that can be done right now.
Would it be out of authority of this board to ask to provide a stub at this connection here?
No, it's not within the purview of this board, nor by the way, within the purview of the Township Committee. It's within the purview of the HTMUA. So you want to have that conversation, you need to talk to Mr. Lynn and the authority.
Okay, thank you. Also, north of this property, there is a fence that is shown right here. I was approached by our previous owner, Mrs. Makarov, that there is a fence and the property actually runs beyond this. Recently, I would say within the last 4 years, a new fence was installed. And I would like, and it looks like it is encroachment on this property to the north. I was wondering if this fence could be removed.
If it encroaches on your property, then we will remove it. Again, I'm not sure it does or does not encroach it, but we would agree to remove it if it in fact encroaches on your property.
But it's here on the survey, this fence is right here.
Okay.
Okay? Okay. I have also concern about reforestation. As Mr. Delcourt, I believe, mentioned, there is quite an imbalance when it comes to reforestation. And we see that there is more of a trees to be planted on this side and almost nothing, actually nothing planted on northern side. Can you explain why is this imbalance?
Yes, the current plans as proposed had the underground stormwater management basin discharge system running along that property line. So that an easement part of that would have precluded trees being planted there. Now that we're rerouting the discharge, we can redistribute the reforestation and provide trees along that buffer as well. It's woods we'd be buffering though. I think we really tried to concentrate to the areas where A, we had existing residents we're buffering, or B, we had stormwater management areas that weren't draining to the basin that we wanted to implement that best management practice of stormwater management by changing the land cover to forest. So they're not just for buffer, they're for those other measures as well, stormwater management control.
But buffer is part of it, isn't it?
Well, there's actually no I don't think there's a requirement in the ordinance for buffering from residential to residential. That's an added benefit of the reforestation as part of the stormwater management. And like I said, we also have a tree mitigation responsibility, which we've addressed with that plantings.
Yeah, Mr. Ford is correct. There's no required buffer on this project because it is residential. However, they do have a responsibility to replace a certain amount of the trees. We talked about the tree mitigation, so that's part of it. As Mr. Ford said, it has to do with stormwater. The final landscaping plan will have to be reviewed and approved by Mr. White's office in terms of suitability and species type and spacing and all that sort of stuff. So it's required to mitigate other aspects of the project, but it's not there as a buffer in the classic sense.
But could it be simply distributed more evenly? Means we see a lot of trees here.
Mr. Ford indicated
And-
that he is willing to redistribute, so that will be part of our revised plan.
So we are talking about how many trees from
Well-
north side?
I just want to be clear, the warning's not for buffering, and in that situation, along that property line, besides the stormwater discharge going there, which was part of the control, there was really no area you can see on the exhibit, the aerial. There's woods on the other side of the property, so there was not a physical entity that we had a concern with buffering. And then with regards to stormwater management, there wasn't a need to reforest that area for stormwater management. The area is drained different ways, so that the reforestation is in the area that drains to the neighbors on Ditmar. That is the one individual that spoke earlier that's at the south end of the property, and then along the entire tract boundary. So there, other than, say, your desire to have buffers and trees along your wooded lot, there's not a technical issue from an engineering standpoint for stormwater management or even, additional tree mitigation that's required there. But if we can look at redistributing the trees to other areas that aren't absolutely needed anymore, we can do that.
So it's more about evenly distributing rather than buffering. And that's
Well,
what
the
I'm
whole,
asking.
everything we've described so far really is not, it's not distributing, it's really, they're targeted for specific needs. Reforestation for stormwater runoff, addressing the tree mitigation requirements, and then an added benefit in some areas is the buffering. Your property doesn't include any of those three elements as a warrant. It's not needed really necessarily for buffering because there's not a physical feature there like an existing residence to buffer. There's not a need for it for stormwater management. And as far as the buffering is concerned, it's not a physical element that you would need to buffer from.
I wouldn't agree with you, mainly because of the distribution of the water. As you see in the plans, all of this water from this, mostly from this, is going into this direction.
Right.
Is it right?
And by virtue of the construction of the cul-de-sac and all those houses, in the direct line you just traced with your pen, all that water is intercepted and caught in that underground basin. So that's the stormwater management measure that takes care of the stormwater in that direction.
I understand that partially it is discharged to retention basin and partially it is discharged to this underground basin. Do you know the percentage of going into this retention basin right here and percentage going into underground?
There's only one underground basin. There's not two. The other stormwater element is just discharge pipes that are along that property line. And they're being relocated so that it discharges to Farm Road.
So all discharge would be to Farm Road?
Correct. And all the impervious coverage, the road, the houses, the driveways, would be directed toward that underground basin.
Okay. previous survey, it was area of uncertain area of overlapping the property line, and mainly it was with couple of pins here from different surveyors. Is it going to be finally settled, or is there any way of settling it? Because again, Mrs. Makarov, the previous owner, was approaching me that where is the property line. So I don't question this, but I wouldn't like this to come in the future.
If there is a question of a title issue or of an encroachment or an overlap, I did not represent Mr. Lutsky when he purchased the property, but you can have your attorney contact me, advise me what the issue is, and hopefully we could resolve it.
Okay, thank you. So what I understand, just to make sure that we are on the same page, so the fences will be removed?
If it is on your property, it will be removed.
Thank you. And I'm, again, so this stop for connection for a sewer would not be possible?
It's not an issue of, it's not within the jurisdiction of this board or of this applicant. It's not a question of, is it possible or not possible? Your project is your project, and you have to work that out with the sewage authority.
It's not a project at this moment because it is expired, so it's not a project anymore. But I was wondering if it would be possible to work towards making another stop of making another connection.
It's not something that we talk about here, sir. Sorry.
Thank you.
Come on up. If you have a question, come on up. Take your time.
I'll tell you what.
Well, you got to come up. Hand the microphone to her, just so we have it.
I've got a strong enough voice, I really don't.
Well, it's for the recording, that's what it is for.
Okay, sure. My name's Audrey Morrison, and what I'd like to do is give you a point of clarification on the trees that are in that area that Mr. Cott is discussing. Since I've lived there now for 50 years, and since I was the person who did a lot of the planting that's on that property, I can tell you that there is black walnut that's there, there's maple there, a number of evergreens, and there is no shortage of something taking up water in that area. There is nothing that's going to be of concern. I don't believe. Okay. Sorry, but.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, I got it. My name's Ken Baker. I'm at 452 Farm Road, and for reference, that is here.
Okay.
Right on the wall here. So there's Mr. Cott's property, which I guess is 150-foot frontage, and then my property. And I guess I'm also concerned with some of the runoff and this, what do you call it? This drainage system that you have that is underground. And I have a septic system, and it's 40 years old. And I guess it doesn't comply because I only have an acre. And I guess the requirement now is 2 acres. So I guess I'm just, and I'm north of this, and everything drains downhill. So, so all that water is going to come through my property, which it sort of does now. And it's not obvious certain times of the year, but other times of the year it certainly is. There used to be actually a stream that ran behind all this and through the person who lives to the north of me right now. But I haven't noticed that recently. So I don't know if there's, again, something you can do with you call it storm drainage that could maybe bring it back out to the road over here and just down the road rather than through the backyards.
Yeah,
That's all.
That's actually what we're doing.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Well, what's this underground thing then?
The underground basin is under the road,
Oh, it's under the road.
under the new road.
Under the new road.
Correct.
Where does it take it to then, may I ask?
out from public ways. Wait till
I'll
time.
ask that question. Where does it go to then?
It'll, right now, the plans show it discharging toward Lot 3. What we've said a number of times already is it would be redirected to the existing storm sewer system in Farm Road. So it would gather the runoff from the houses, the road, in the subdivision, you got it, take it out to Farm Road and connect to Farm Road. And once it gets in the storm drainage pipes in Farm Road,
Yeah,
it's
that's
not
fine.
going to get onto your property. It's
Okay.
going to be part of that stormwater
Done.
management system
Done.
in Farm Road.
So there's not going to be any runoff like the other woman said, coming this way or this way. It'll be minimal.
Minimal, right. The
Minimal.
rear yards of those
Yeah.
lots,
I
right.
just don't want my septic system to fail, after 40-some years. It's going to fail eventually, but
Mr. Ford, is the underground detention system sealed? Or is it perforated so it's allowing the water to perk into the ground?
Well, we've had, right now it's sealed pipes because the on-site permeability is poor of this soil. Yeah, so it's a sealed system.
So therefore, you contain all this water under the road is not going to affect
Correct.
his septic system?
No, no,
Thank
it
you.
won't be adding to the groundwater.
okay, perfect, good, thank you.
So I just want to get clarification. So we're going to route all the water off that property, throw it on the farm road. Where is that going to end up?
The existing stormwater in Farm Road, I believe, goes to the culvert under Farm Road that's down near Valley, that intersection. There's a culvert under Farm Road just before you get to the intersection with Valley Road. Right. And it will be, the underground basin on our site is substantial. There's a series of 3-foot diameter pipes, some 6 of those, to provide a substantial volume for the water to be detained under the road in that containment system and released at a controlled rate such that the peaks are reduced from the site. So, and that's all proven out with the storm drainage calculations that are reviewed by Mr. White.
So are we going to see a little stream going down Farm Road?
No, it's all underground. It's all underground.
Yeah, I know, but you said we're routing it out to Farm Road.
To storm drain in Farm Road.
Yeah.
Into the storm drains
Right.
on Farm Road, where do
It's-
those lead to? We're dumping that into,
That's underground pipes. It's all catch basins in the series of pipes that are in Farm Road right now.
it's not going to go.
It's not above grade. We're not discharging into a roadside swale in Farm Road. Farm Road has,
It's got a detention basin. Is
and it
that
has
where
a
this is gonna
detention
end up?
basin just opposite Mr. Cott's property, correct?
It's going to the detention basin.
The large detention base, upper
It's
left
just-
corner of your exhibits,
Right.
does Farm Road,
I don't think that
Tributary
Farm
there,
Road
or-
connects to that. I think that's for the development, which is Sandalwood, which is Stoll Drive. That was 16 lots that was built right next to Brentwood Hills. And that all has its own stormwater management system.
does not discharge the stream to the north?
Correct, right.
Yeah, I think it's going to create a problem.
It all goes down Farm Road.
We're not going to create any issues
No,
down on
he'll
Valley.
prove out
No.
with his engineering study that there won't be any problem in Farm Road. It may require the system be oversized a little more, because now it's not the reductions that he's got designed for, but the capacity in Farm Road.
Correct.
So he
We
may
got it
have to,
figured? Well, we've calculated that yet?
not yet, this is all theory at this point. What you have before you is an underground detention basin that's discharging right next to Lot 3, which was my
Right.
concern, with a point discharge.
Yeah. I just want to make sure we're not going to create a problem
No, we'll,
out down the Valley Road. I mean, why wouldn't that have been?
no, sir. I'll make sure of that, as well as the RCC is going to be looking at the plans also. So you
Okay.
have 2 people looking at it.
Hi, so the clarification about all the water going out to Farm Road, I think sounds very good. Can you just maybe add a little more clarity now regarding the trees in the bottom right that the one resident spoke about, where the tree is down? Will a lot of that also go out, or how much of that might get covered or not?
Well, I don't think that we can get all the water from that residence area of this property, because it's just probably elevation-wise just too low. But in part of the regrading, like I said earlier, we actually elevated those houses. Like she referenced an elevation higher by the houses, as part of the regrading to direct those houses out toward the road. And there was a comment about a swale between two of the properties being partially drained toward the rear. Whatever portion of that we can push back out toward the road to even further limit the drainage to the rear, we can. I guess it's a balancing act. You know, right now we have a complying design with a discharge to where a substantial portion of the property drains to Mr. Cott's property. There was a concern about a point discharge where most of the water goes today, and we've acquiesced to offer to reroute it to Farm Road, albeit underground and not above ground in swales to provide, you know, cause any flooding or adverse condition. But we can't take all the water that currently drains to the rear and push it all out to Farm Road.
Mr. White, I'm looking at the contour plans here, and just to clarify, on the original plan, it looks to me that about 90% of the existing lot right now grades back to the back of the property. So you've got 99, 100 feet just inside the driveway going to 91 at this lady's house, at this young lady's house. The new grading, I'm just doing the math here, that furthest most back house is at 96. And then, so you have 120 feet only of land now grading back to that last house, and the other remaining acreage is all now lower than the rest of that whole property. So 75% of that property will now be draining away from her house, whereas previously 75 to 80% of that property was draining towards her house. So that is the reason of the regrading. To answer your question in the back, yes, you're at 91 and the house right behind you is at 96, but the rest of the lot is now lower or draining away from your property, whereas the original contour, you're at 100 feet, 30 feet from Farm Road, draining back to 91. So I agree with you, and if you want to talk, we'll talk, but I think that the grading and part of this whole stormwater management plan that the engineers come up with is to direct water away from homes. And yes, you were concerned about the 96 feet, but the reason for that was to get the lot re-tilted the other way, away from all those homes in the back of the property. So that's why they were raised.
Excellent,
Mr.
excellent
Chairman, you're 100%
description.
right. That's what I was going to ask you, Mike. Maybe you could just show it up there that essentially
Like the ridge
everything
line
that's
is up here
flowing right
now.
to the back.
And that's
goes-
what drains, and by filling back here and raising the grade, we move the ridge line back to here, so all this drains forward and less drains to the back. Exactly.
So the properties to the east should face materially less runoff than and we're capturing more from the lot going into the stormwater basin rather than flowing off to the north and to the south.
Correct.
And to add in the tree specifications, there are trees that can be specified for those low-lying areas that are very good at sucking up water, i.e. willows, et cetera, that are basically big vacuum cleaners for those particularly low areas. I'm sure that our planners can put that in to alleviate your concerns about water and standing water. So I'll leave that with Mr. White's crew to come up with that.
Already note, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
So I think, in essence, your situation should be improved.
All right, we have a follow-up question here.
I would like to have just one additional sentence. Even though I had some concerns, I think that this project does has few positive impacts, like Mrs. Morrison and Mrs. Morrison home can be served by sewer, and also with drainage, as I see, it's more into the farm road and less to the property that I know. So I believe that's positive with this application. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. All right. Is this, not that I'm cutting anybody off, anyone else? Yeah. Okay, come on up. You're the only one left, you might as well get your 2 cents in. Yeah, well, you got your proxy today.
Okay, my name is John Nicosotis, N-E-K-R-I-S-O-V-A-S. I live at 504, 501, and 503 Farm Road. That's one farm, but it's subdivided. Can I have your mic? Everybody's talking about this drainage stuff, but nobody realizes back, I guess, about 40 years ago in Valley Road, they made a runaway road. It's a paper road where all the water ran down Valley Road. It kept running to 206 basically, but it floods Valley Road. Now there's a paper road there that's an emergency road for flooding. Seems to me like all this water is going to run towards that emergency road now.
Yeah, that's to the north of this property, I know what you're referring
Yes,
to.
it is, towards the north.
That's just on the lot just opposite, next to you. There's an emergency access lane. At that point, the runoff in Farm Road is in catch basins and underground, so it wouldn't be above ground.
Yeah, but every
And it
time we
would
have
be piped under that.
every time we have a flooding swill, you never included the runoff from the roofs of these houses and everything. All that's included, right?
Correct.
Okay, but then where's that water go? Even if it's underground basin, it has to end up going someplace. Where does it go? Downhill, and downhill is Valley Road.
Yeah, and it's released at a controlled rate, so it doesn't increase the peak runoff.
How do you know it's a controlled rate? I'm not an engineer. I don't understand. What do you consider a controlled rate?
There's an outlet structure in the underground basin that has a series of hydraulic entities, orifices, and weirs that don't allow the water to run out at the high rate, but at a reduced rate.
Okay, because it doesn't bother me as the residents that live down there. That you should realize that when they have a bad storm like we had like 3 years ago, like Sandy and everything, you know, I don't know how you can control something like that, but, you know, there's smarter people than me. And I live on the south side right here. This is farmland, correct?
Yes.
So, you know, I don't want no swamping going this way, so you say you put in all these trees and everything, but I don't know how that will affect me along the line.
We're not only putting in the trees, but we're reducing the area from this site that drains to there.
So in other words, if you
The
build...
chairman described well.
Yeah, well, you know, I don't want any more swamping than it is, because it is farmland and it should be preserved. Right now, it's preserved, but, you know.
I think that the testimony was given by the engineers, and I tried to explain, is that the grading is going to alleviate all of, or most of the water problems that you've had in the past, just from runoff, let alone the direction of the runoff.
Okay, because
So,
that's
and-
what everybody says now, but when it happens, you know, you talk to other entities in the township and everything, they point the finger. I just don't want that to happen again.
I think that this is similar to a lot of situations where there's existing drainage problems. We've been described by you as a neighboring resident and the other resident. What we're doing is not guaranteed that those drainage area issues will go away. But what we're doing, we will improve the situation by reducing the runoff to those drainage areas.
And another thing is, I'm surprised there wasn't no road, you know, investigations or anything, because if you go down a Farm Road, it goes at an angle. Somebody's coming 40, 50 miles an hour, and there's another side road to pull out. There's going to be a bad accident. Then you say if somebody's responsible, then everybody points the finger at the police department and everything. Well, it isn't their fault that they're overbuilding. I'm surprised nobody else brought that up. There should have been an investigation and street investigations.
Well, the issue, first of all, we're not overbuilding. The ordinance allows us to build what is being proposed on this lot. We're not asking for any variances. This site calls for 4 lots, and that's what we're proposing. There are adequate site distances, as was testified to by Mr. Ford, so that people are, if they're exiting this private road, they will have sufficient visibility to see what's coming both to their left and right. So that's all been looked at.
Well, I don't know. I could pull out right now, and I could show you where there's the hedges where I have to pull out practically 4 feet into the road to see what's happening.
Again, if you heard the testimony, there are site triangles that have to be provided so that if a car pulls to that intersection, he or she will have the ability to look left or right without being impeded by trees, bushes, or hedges.
Well, it's news to me.
No conversation from the diet. Wait, no. Okay. If you would listen, I said no, okay?
And this corrosion problem seems pretty bad. You know, you have underground this, that, the other thing, but I've seen it where it's flooded. We don't have this 4 or 5 more houses, roads, and roofs to deal with, and the flooding problem does get bad. And I'm really surprised that, you know, nobody else really has come out to say it, because it is going to bother me. You swamp it, we'll see how many trees you built. There's trees that are 100 years old, you knock down. You're going to put up a little tree, and it's going to take it 50 years to grow, and by then, sure, we're going to get a couple floods, or it's going to grow this, that, the other thing. I'm really concerned about this flooding condition, because it's happening.
I didn't hear a question, but we've talked
My
about...
question is, what kind of saplings are you going to plant these 5-year-old saplings and wait 50 years for them to?
No, there's a landscape plan that's reviewed and is approved as part of the Townships review, and they're substantial caliber, 3-4-inch caliber. They're not saplings.
Yes, okay. And the only other
But they'll
thing I
take time to grow. We're not going to plant a 40-foot high tree.
I'm sure the board will look at it, but, you know, I don't understand it. They say it's 10 feet here, not enough, 20 feet here, not enough. There's not enough land to build that many houses. It doesn't sound like a lot, but the sound of the acreage, it seems like a lot of houses.
It's fitting within an acre zoning. Each house is over an acre on the lot, so they're...
Okay. But the corrosion in that seems to be the biggest problem, is going to be a big problem. Maybe not now, maybe not 2 years from now, but 3 years when everything gets flooded and everything.
But I guess what I want to leave you with, though, is if there is a problem today where the flow of the water is creating flooding on certain of the surrounding properties, the applicant is not required to remediate those issues. They need to ensure that they're not making it worse, and in many cases, they make it better.
Okay? Because I've had an instance with this town years ago where it has happened, and then 2-3 years down the road, nobody wants to know anything. You have to pay for a lawyer, it costs you more money down the line.
Okay, well, we don't know what you're referring to, and this board can't control that.
Yes, I understand that. That's why I just mentioned it.
All we can control is this application that's in front of us and what is being done today. Okay, whether you had problems in the past and what you say is, it's quite possible, but we can't take that into testimony, okay? So do you have any other questions, particularly to this application for this witness?
No, sir.
Thank you. I think somebody else wanted to come up again, or you wanted to join in? Please restate your name on the mic, please, and come in front.
Sir,
What's the name again?
I'm Frank Thompson, 1 Stoll Drive.
Thank you.
I do not, in all my years, the first time I've never met this gentleman, always a neighbor, which is, I'm glad I'm here tonight, so I've met him.
Come up front, please. Just come up front. The mic's not working. Come around the
Okay. I don't know.
Come in the front.
come around, stand in front, please.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
That one's on.
That one's on. Go ahead.
Is it on?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Like I said, I've never met the gentleman, though been a neighbor, and I'm glad to hear what he said tonight. And what I mean by that, quite simply, is I understand Mr. Delacour saying we can't address the traffic incident at this board. Again, talking about what I was talking about before. If you can't, if you're approving something, who can? So part of the condition of you saying, hey, we're going to approve this, is to also hear what the taxpayers are saying and saying, okay, we also have a plan to try and help with this. So how do we do that?
So as I indicated, or I'll answer your question.
Yeah.
This board does not have jurisdiction. So what we're doing today, and there's a process that we have to go through, so I just want you to understand.
I understand that.
Mr. Ford has testified, and that's essentially a quasi-legal testimony, and we're asking questions about his testimony. What we've indicated as it relates to the traffic is that this board cannot adjudicate that issue.
I understand.
I said, from a township perspective, and I sit on the township committee, I will seek that, we will talk to our safety people at the police department to see if there's anything that can be done. But it is not something that's part of, nor can it be taken into account for the decision as it relates to this application.
And while I understand that, what I'm saying to you is, in the hope of making everybody more successful, if you need volunteer time, I will gladly do that. but one board saying, this isn't my jurisdiction, another board saying, well, we can only have this guy do it, and then you being asked to make a vote to consider something for all of your people in your township, knowing that there's something hanging over that we say we can't control, helps nobody.
Well, so I'm going to disagree with you there, because there is a process we have to follow. And you have an applicant that has submitted a compliant application that needs to be, that this board is legally required to hear based
agree.
upon the facts of that issue.
I
So-
agree.
Okay, so the matter that you're discussing, as I indicated, we can take that up, but not here.
Okay, but my question, I'll be quick and done dirty with it. Can we just lay out what that process is?
No, not,
Okay.
as I said, we will take it to our police department for review. That's the course that we have to take.
Can I bring you the 3 letters that I have from the police department saying, thank you,
You
goodbye?
can bring it to the administration office,
Okay.
not part of this application.
No, but it just continues to not be addressed, and then you continue to have the problem.
Maybe it was addressed, maybe you don't like the answer.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure what happened.
Are you looking for the speed limit to be reduced? Is that it?
I'm looking for a process by which that is formally reviewed and gone through, submitted to, testified to, just like tonight.
The police department normally does a speed study, and where they do an analysis, there's a statistical analysis, hard to say, way you determine the speed. Just because you want the speed limit to be lowered, that's not the matter. It's what the road will allow people to travel safely, and what is actually going on there right now. Now, if you have people that are speeding because they're going to work or late for work, whatever, that's an enforcement issue. You can't just change a sign from 35 to 30 and expect a miracle, because that won't happen. People are people, and they'll continue to drive the speed limit they're driving now. This applicant has 2 houses on the property right now. They're adding 3 houses.
And that's the issue.
The 3
I'll
houses-
drop myself, sir.
No, wait a
please.
second, excuse me, let me finish speaking first, sir.
Absolutely.
Basically, those 3 houses will add a total of 30 trips a day, correct, Michael?
Correct.
As per your traffic report that you submitted.
I don't
So-
disagree with you,
So we
sir.
looked at the traffic, and I'm just trying to tell you, the board did look at some of what you're asking to look at. That's under their purview. Their purview is not the speed limit. That's for the township committee and myself, the township engineer, to handle.
I don't disagree with you, sir. Okay? That's the approval process. What I'm asking you is, how, as a planning board, do you avoid the next person coming in, like Mr. Koch, I don't know if he's still here or not, who wants to have his proposal put through, and then have somebody like me coming and saying the same thing? So
Bill?
what I'm asking you is, you've heard from your citizens tonight that they're not happy. So you're going to create more unhappiness. So therefore, as a planning board, working for the citizens, how do you make his job easier, my life happier, and everybody safer, as opposed to putting up my arms and going and saying, not my job?
Well,
And
first,
that's all I'm saying.
No.
Because I agree with everything else that's been said.
well, let me try, from the legal point of view, to answer that question. The board is required to review, among many things, traffic impacts upon. As Mr. White has indicated, it is not speed that's the issue, it's the impact of the trips coming off the development. The situation is not going to dramatically change the situation on Farm Road one way or the other. As Mr. Delcor has indicated, the process for reviewing how the speed limit is established, and Mr. White also stated it, is for the police department to re-review the situation at hand. Whether Mr. Cott does or does not develop his property, whether the applicant's neighbor to the south does or doesn't develop, or any other development up and down Farm Road, they'll all be reviewed by the planning board to the extent they come before the planning board as it relates to the impact of additional traffic upon the road itself. If, for the sake of this discussion, Farm Road is re-reviewed and the speed limit is reduced to 25, that will not, in and of itself, make traffic on Farm Road dramatically better if you, your neighbors, the rest of the residents in the township all want to drive 40 miles an hour on a 25-mile-an-hour road. So unfortunately, or fortunately, as the case may be, one of the many things that government has no control over is individual behavior. And this board, any more than the Township Committee, can't enforce individual behavior. What we can deal with is each applicant, as they come to this board, as it relates to the impact of their application on the overall master plan and the situation, which we have done here, which we will do when the next applicant comes before, when somebody wants to do it on your side of the street. It all has to be looked at individually, as well as collectively.
So I'm gonna just add one thing to that, because I think you're looking for something that I'm not sure I can give you. But there is no formal hearing process or meeting such as this where there's legal test about the issue that you're talking about. However, if there is an issue that we need to address, we have an administration staff and we have our police department. The administration staff is just in the room next to this one. Go in, have a discussion with our administrator, and we'll review the process. That's how these issues will get done. We'll undertake a safety study to see if there's an issue there, but it's not something we can do here. And in fairness, we're being unfair to the applicant by having this discussion that we really should not have as part of this hearing.
I understand that.
Okay.
But it's.
So,
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Is there any more questions? All right. So we'll make a motion to close public.
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anything else you'd like to add, Counselor?
I have no additional witnesses. I just want to be very brief. I think you were rather prescient at the beginning of this evening when you said most of the issues are going to deal with stormwater because that's what the public wants to know about. I think if you heard the testimony of Mr. Ford and the comments of Mr. White, Mr. Ford has addressed the issues of stormwater. There are some things that Mr. White pointed out that can make the situation even better. Based on some of the comments of the neighbors this evening, we can make them even a little bit better than what you thought. So we are going to address the issues in this plan. You can rest assured, and the neighbors can rest assured that as a result of this development, we will comply with all requirements of the municipality, of the DRCC, and handle the stormwater management, and hopefully the situation in the surrounding area will be better than it is before. We're not going to solve all the problems as the committeemen had indicated earlier, but we will address what we need to address. Finally, the application is a conforming application in all respects. I do thank the board for their time and their patience and would respectfully request that the board grant the subdivision approval with the compliance of all the staff reports as we indicated we would do.
I'm going to ask, Mr. Chairman, I want to have a conversation with Mr. White before the board takes any further action, but I would like to point out, Mr. Lanford, that if your client's proposal relative to the stormwater management does not comply or meet the requirements relative to Mr. White, you're going to be back here because the condition is going to require that no approval be granted until such occurs. So I want to make sure that your client, I know you do this more than once, that your client understands that the mere fact that everybody seems to be on the same page at the moment is only because nobody has looked at all the numbers to make sure that the page actually is matched. But I would like to have a conversation, Mr. White, Mr. Chairman.
All
I
right,
think
so we'll
also
take
probably break.
a 5-minute recess. We'll reconvene at 9:25.
Thank you.
It's now 9:30. We're back in session. Make a note that Mr. Wagner had to leave. He was feeling under the weather and felt it not good that he stay. So just put on the record for that.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for the break. I had an opportunity to speak to the board engineer regarding some issues he had as to the stormwater management calculations and the need to make sure that they are potentially workable, or if not, we'll go to Plan B. So after conversations with him, after conversations with the applicant's attorney, who has apparently spoken to his client, we are going to continue this hearing until December 14th. to allow those issues to hopefully be reviewed and addressed, so at that point, the board can potentially take an action. So it's well within the time of decision, so we're asking the board to continue this application to December 14th, 2017, without further notice. Any issues, Mr. Lamb?
There are no issues. I discussed it with my client, and obviously it's in everybody's best interest to have the stormwater reviewed, and hopefully when we come back on the 14th, we can report to you that it works and take a vote and go home.
Okay, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn this to December 14th. Continue, continue to December 14th without renotice.
So moved.
Thank you. Second. Roll call, please.
Yes, Ms. Forrest?
Yes.
Mr. Hishpan?
Yes.
Mr. Scobah?
Yes.
Mr. Weinstein?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Julian?
Yes.
Committeeman Delcor?
Yes.
Mayor Sarachi?
Yes.
Chairman Lapani?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So we took a break here, so we'll see if we can get our fingers back together. So we'll move on to the next topic. Is OM Realty LLC, File 17, PB11 INF, Block 182, Lot 38.01, Lot and 38.02, 349 Route 206, which is Lot 38.01, and 351 Doctors Way, Lot 38.02. Applicant is requesting informal review regarding a major site plan proposal to construct a new plus or minus 26,000 square foot medical office building on vacant Lot 38.02 and relocate the existing tenants from Lot 3801 and renovate or demolish and construct a new building to replace the existing building on Lot 3801 on the property in the HS Highway Service Zone.
Mr. Ford, isn't that your applicant sitting
Representing the applicant will be
there? Mr. Ford.
Mr. Tony Ford.
Just for the record, for those of you who are concerned, the gentleman sitting in the audience is a colleague of mine who you have seen here before for planning board meetings. He is not the applicant.
Hello.
Rock and roll. I think he knows. Now,
I'm good.
hello, Mr. Ford. Long time no see.
Hello. I've only got 4 hours of testimony.
Okay. Do it in 50.
6 hours of questions.
As, here on behalf of the applicant this evening, this is informal. I don't think we need to mark the exhibits. I can just describe them.
Okay.
This is, on the left is the existing condition map. To the right is the proposed condition map. What we have is Route 206, Doctors Way, Medicor building, a vacant lot. Beyond the vacant lot, you actually see, I guess, the open field where the fair is, and there's some ball fields. And then there's an existing one-story building on the south side of Doctors Way, which I think is probably better known as the DeCanto building.
That's further north.
Oh, okay. This was their chiropractic. And then to the south off the page is tributary to the Royce Brook. And then just south of that is that assisted living that's currently under construction. So this is just to the north of where Old Somerville Road intersects Route 206. And what I'll tell the board is that part of the, we've been informed by DOT, there's a contract out for the bypass, accepting bids mid-November. So the bypass north section and south section connections are becoming a reality.
Can you say that again? I just like hearing it.
This is informal. You got that, public?
He's not sworn in, don't forget.
Speed restrictions.
That's barring any, withdrawals of transportation funds or anything. But part of that reconfiguration will include, actually it'll end just at Doctors Way. And what we understand is part of that improvement will actually turn Doctors Way into a right-in, right-out. That the centerline median with the 2 lanes in each direction, the concrete median will extend just past Doctors Way. And that may actually be part of the reason why I think part of that bypass improvement project will include the jug handle to the north of here. It's my understanding. That all said, what we're proposing is, as was stated in the introduction, a new medical office building in the vacant lot to the rear of the site. There's two. The Medicor property is not part of the application. It's just the property on the south side of Doctor's Way that has the existing office building, parking, and a smaller existing office building, albeit medical uses, and then a vacant lot to the rear. The vacant lot to the rear would be developed with approximately 27,000 square foot, two-story medical office building, something similar in architecture to the Medicor building. And that would allow the owners of these properties to take tenants from that existing medical facility, potentially relocate them into the new office, and then reconstruct and/or substantially renovate an aging office building. No new access to Route 206. Doctor's Way would stay the same. The parking lot that exists today would stay the same, 65 parking spaces. And then there would be a new parking lot constructed to service the new office building and stormwater management facilities to facilitate the stormwater management for that building and parking. This is in the highway office zone or highway service zone.
How big is the lot that the building's on?
They're, the existing building's on a 2.4 acre site and the proposed building's on a 3.3 acre site. So in total, they're 5.5 acres. There's a substantial area of the vacant lot that's, and even the occupied lot that's encumbered by environmental constraints like stream corridors, wetlands, DNR Canal Commission buffers. So we'd have to deal with them as part of the development.
What kind of, you said medical office, are you looking for like small doctor's offices or anything like a hospital type? What are they looking to put in this building?
Well, right now it's small medical offices, so I think that's the theme. The owner is a doctor. He's got partners on this property as well as he's actually part of the partnership for the Medicor building, albeit not all the same partners, which has actually caused us to develop the two southerly properties that are controlled by the one entity and not involve the Medicor property. So, but it's something similar. In his mind, it would be something similar to the Courtyard Medical Facility where you have a number of independent, perhaps even condoed, but it would be medical offices. And the doctors prefer the single-story building, but we are proposing a two-story building that would attract some tenants on the second floor.
Is there, or on that map, I see there's a lot of trees. Are there wetland delineations anywhere on that?
We haven't done a specific study yet. We do have wetland mapping from various sources, like the DEP website, but moving forward from this informal review and perhaps any direction you could give us that would help us take the right path, we would move forward with the site plan application, which would include all those detailed studies.
Okay.
Right now, it looks like the wetlands are not the most restrictive. It's more the Delaware American Canal Commission stream corridor buffer that's associated with the
Royce Brook.
the Royce Brook, correct. There is public sewer. It actually runs through the property, but the existing office building is currently serviced, I believe, by a public well because if you recall, the Medicor office building project brought 206 down from the north on 206 down the south of 206. So the Medicor office building brought water in from south on 206 across its frontage to a hydrant at this location. So there was no public water when this available when this building was built. And actually just recently when the assisted living project was built, the water was further extended and directional drilled under the Royce Brook to get water to that site. So believe it or not, this substantial major highway didn't have that utility in it. But both of the existing building and the proposed buildings would be serviced by public water and sewer.
The buildings as they are on there, would they require any variances?
Right now, I believe we don't have any variances being proposed.
Just one.
Just one.
What's that?
The maximum front yard would be exceeded for the rear building.
We're set back too far back.
Yeah, and there's possibly a parking deficiency on the front property.
Yeah, because you have to look at, now your ordinance requires usable area versus gross floor area. And then Mr. Masky's correct, we had, and I think there wouldn't be a parking issue because we've incorrectly at one location identified the gross square footage as actually as if it were the usable square footage, but it's actually the gross square footage. When you take into consideration the usable square footage, we wouldn't need a parking variance, but that would be something we'd have to deal with in the details of the site plan application.
Any other questions? Okay. Open public, open to public. Motion to open to public. Sam got it? All right.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Public.
Yeah, I got to say. Susan Gulliford, Hunt Club Road. On the old building, is that your doctor's care building? Is that the one?
No, I think your doctor's care is pretty far north of this site. This is just north of the old Somerville Road intersection with Route 206 and the.
Just south of like the Valley National Bank.
Yeah, I was trying to picture it.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, renovate or reconstruct the old building. Are you considering a one-story, two-story? You have any clue at all yet on your square footage on that?
We're indicating about 17,000 square feet. On the new building, that would be a two-story building if it were built. That is the rendering to the right, which shows a beige building, a new building that's actually been reoriented parallel to Doctor's Way and narrower, mainly because we've been told by the Delaware River and Canal Commission, if you have a building in their stream corridor, you can renovate it, you can rehab it, but if you take it down and demo it, you can't build it back. So the new building shows what we'd have to do to comply with their requirements. And with regards to renovate, it's really probably it's a business decision of just what the expenses would be, and that would be like an architect or a developer or builder guiding the owners as to which is the best course of action.
Okay.
That would be, the alternative would be renovate the existing building, so the existing U-shaped building would stay there, and perhaps, get a new facelift. The architecture of it would be upgraded.
Okay, the appearance of the proposed design on the right-hand side, that's all one development, even though it appears to be one building, one parking lot, one building, one parking lot, correct? This is all
Yeah, they're two
one-
separate lots, yes, they're two separate lots.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Anyone else? Okay. Motion to close public.
So moved.
Second. Sam's got it. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So that's it.
Is anything?
Okay.
Thank you very much for your
Thanks.
time.
All right. Good night, Tony. Thank you. All right, so our next meeting is going to be November 2nd, because we canceled the business meeting of October 26th.
Yes, are you canceling the October 26th business meeting?
Oh, I thought you said we did. All right.
Well, we did that last time? Why don't you do it again?
Okay. We'll take we don't have anything that we need to do.
We don't need it, no.
We have a motion to cancel October 26th.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so it's
The next
canceled.
meeting is November 2nd.
So the next meeting will be November 2nd here.
Mr. Chairman, if there's going to be any issues involving attendance and quorum over the next couple of months, I know we're moving into that time of the year. Could we please let the planning office know, because we anticipate a few things coming up between now and the end of the year.
Right. So please, if it's something that you know, give as much notice so we make sure we have a quorum for the applicants. Okay, so with that, I will, motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second, all in favor? Aye. We are adjourned, 9:45.